Welcome to Kentucky Crossroads with Roger Ford. Here, you'll find a lively discussion about the issues, unique communities, and fascinating people from across the Bluegrass State. Each week, we'll discuss our history and culture, as well as explore the unique places that make Kentucky so special. Now, join our host Roger Ford as we take a journey through the Bluegrass State and discover the stories that make us so unique.
Welcome to this episode of Kentucky Crossroads. I have as my guest today Paul Boardman. Paul is currently chairman of Decouple China PAC and is the publisher of the Boardman Report, and we'll talk quite extensively about it. I think this is a very timely conversation. He's been very active throughout his career, dating back to the 93, even back to the Reagan-Bush campaigns. He's a former candidate for a GOP nominee for Congress out of California, and we will talk a little bit about that. He was a signatory to the Contract with America, which is always, I think that's always a good thing to wear as a badge of honor, is to be able to say that you actually signed the contract with America. There was a lot of productive things come out of that. He's currently living in Indianapolis, Indiana. He's a sixth generation Indianian or a Hoosier, and has been active in Republican politics, Republican policy, working for former Indiana Senator Richard Lugar, who's one of my personal favorites. He, again, worked with advanced staff for Reagan-Bush in '84, then followed on with that, working for and joined Comdex, led by Sheldon Adelson, the late Sheldon Adelson. Is that the Latino? That's that guy, isn't it, Paul?
Right.
Yeah. So he has got a varied background, all of which will lead us to the conversation about his PAC and his publication. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Paul Boardman. Paul, how are you doing today?
Well, Roger, I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well and your audience is all good. Again, I am originally from Indiana, so I am a Hoosier. And I just keep asking my wife if I dreamt that IU beat Purdue last week, but they actually did. It wasn't a dream. And interestingly enough, I was in California, and the beginning of my marriage, I did what George Bush W did, which is I got married and then ran for Congress.
Because that's always that's always the right thing. Get married, run for Congress. That's always the very first thing that you want to do, right?
I'm not sure that. And I was in California and ran in a 30% Republican district. I think that was a good proving ground for what I'm doing today. I learned a lot of lessons. I met a communist, came to my event, and I said to him, I said, "Are you a communist?" And he said, "Why would you say that?" And he said, "I don't have a beard or anything like that." And I said, "I don't know, you just look incredibly unhappy and everybody else is very happy."
They seem to be very, very unhappy people, and they seem to want everybody to. They seem to want everybody to be unhappy. I don't know.
They really do. They really do.
They really. I saw a funny shirt the other day talking about communists. It said that the F in communism stands for food, and I shared that with a friend of mine. He said, "Well, there is no F in communism." I said, "Well, see, there you are."
There you are.
If you have communism, you starve to death because you have no food. So I think I've ordered that shirt because I think that's a pretty funny thing to wear around to let people see, because they'll say, "Well, there is no F in food." That's right. There's no F in communism. There's no food if you have communism.
No food.
And I think we're seeing some of that right now in this country with the way we food shortages.
I wish we had Ronald Reagan. I was blessed to run in his district and told by many people that he voted for me. I was so honored, and his people were, were supporting me, from Ambassador Glenn Holden to so many of the other people that were in his administration. I didn't realize how fortunate I was at the time. It was truly incredible. And Bill Wilson, he was actually ambassador of the Vatican, had me over and said, Paul, he gave me a book called Creeping Socialism, and he said, just want you to know that the president wanted you to have this book. And I said, well, he wasn't seeing people at that time, although another friend was sending notes to him through his locker at the LA Country Club. So I wish I'd gotten those notes. I never got to keep them, but he kept them for himself. And but they passed notes back and forth saying, okay, he said, the president said that it's tough for me because my congressman is Henry Waxman and my senator was Dianne Feinstein or something like that. I'm not well represented. But it was a 30% Republican district. I was going to get the registration. I really learned a lot, met some great people. I do believe that it's helping me today because I did understand a little bit about how the ultra left operates and how to run a political action committee today that I started. I'm in my third year. I've been on the China issue for 4 years and raising money, plan to support candidates in this election cycle. We have a pledge that I put together. It's the Decouple China Pledge. And it's been really interesting to understand the modus operandi, the MO of the CCP. And I think it's really important that everybody understands that so we can defend and defeat.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are we can talk about Iran, we can talk about what's going on in Russia right now. And yes, there is that axis of evil that is, and I think has continued to be Russia, China, Iran, North Korea.
Right.
We can name them. They are aligned against us and against Europe. And China's the financier, and I guess Russia's the muscle. I don't know how well that's working out for them, but that's kind of the game plan. Almost unreported was the story the other day that I guess they blame Israel for everything, but the Iranians, there was a multiple drone attack that targeted where they're manufacturing their drones and so forth. I mean, it just kind of it goes unreported in the press. There's so much of this stuff that goes on out there in the world. And, and somebody said, well, who do you think did that? I said, well, probably us and the Israelis. They said, well, do you have a problem with that? I said, no, I don't have a problem with that at all. I said, when the guy across the table says he wants to kill you, I tend to want to believe that. And the Iranians and the Chinese, I think at the end of it, they want to dominate, the world. They want to dominate the world's economy and enslave peoples. And I mean, it's just, and somebody has to draw the line. And I think that's we can talk, delve into your PAC, but I think it's past time that we have an organized effort in this country that kind of snaps people out of their slumber and says, hey, we have tried the path that through trade and cooperation and sharing of, whatever technology, exchanges at every level between our country and the Chinese. I think that has proven to be a wrong path for us as a country. And I think now is the time that we past time having this conversation that we need to get our house in order, or the Chinese are going to get it in order for us. We just here in the last week, apparently multiple balloons. We've now come to realize that they are flying these I almost say low tech devices for whatever reason. I can imagine some reasons why they would have those, but they clearly are not our friends. They're not our ally in any way. And they have basically pillaged our manufacturing and moved it to China, and they're now, they're obviously we all know that. Um, but
Right.
I guess with your organization, Paul, it is
Mhm.
Decouple China. What does that actually mean? I guess, and it's as
Well,
far as a definition.
decoupleChina.org. And what it means is, and I've been advocating this now for 3 years, it hasn't changed. When I started, I'd see one or two articles about China a week. Of course, now it's almost a commodities market of information as they've metastasized and moved to the next level with Xi becoming essentially their supreme leader, almost Mao status, actually functioning Mao status. So he started in 2012, but you count 3 years before that, most people will say China changed 15 years ago, or dramatically, and they've been on this path. So that's a long time, and they've actually been able to start implementing their tactics, and they're doing
Mhm.
that now. So I look at what they're doing as yeah, they've got a functioning capability around the world to implement what they've been wanting to implement for 12 years. They have that capacity. We're absolutely on the defensive. So if you play their game, which is, okay, we're going to attack you with TikTok for 10 years, gather all this information, and then you ban it, okay, and it takes you 5 years to ban it, that's obviously, that's not going to work. You and they will just exact a higher price if you ban it. So every time you do something, they'll come back and exact a higher price.
Yeah.
That's why I've felt that the best way is just to completely decouple from them. No trade, nothing. Just treat them the way you treat Iran, period. If you do that, then they're still going to come at you in 100 different ways, which is what they do. But you can potentially manage it. At this point today, you're in this relationship with them. They'll pull this string, you'll pull this string. Who's in control? And it turns out they're in control because they're doing more trade with us. So everything they're doing is adding up to the fact that we feel like we have to appease them. At least this White House. I don't think another White House would do that. This one, in their party, they're far extreme, would be communists, and they want to build more government. So they're aligned and going to the Chinese to buy our treasury bonds to build our government. So you're just giving up the entire negotiation, and you're giving up control, and you're letting them control you. It must be a field day. I can only imagine how exciting it is in the amoral fascist Chinese Communist Party Politburo, 30 families that run it. They just said, wow, this is great. I mean, I've got America. They're just handing it to me. I don't have to do a whole lot of work. I fly a balloon over, mess with them, gain some more control. It's absolutely incredible. It's just incredible the length that we're handing it to them on a platter. They must be so excited. I can't even
Well,
imagine how excited they are.
you know, we talked a little earlier, but you mentioned there's 30 families
Mm-hmm.
basically that have been in
Mm-hmm.
power in one way or
Mm-hmm.
another since 48, when Mao, I think it was 48, when Mao overthrew the nationalist uh forces, and
Mm-hmm.
under Chiang Kai-shek, and they fled the country, to what is now Taiwan. But basically, thinking of families, think of the organized crime in this country. You had,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere around 5, 8 families, maybe 10 families controlling the organized crime. This is basically a organized crime syndicate under the
Right.
guise of a government. I mean, this is
Mm-hmm.
basically what it is.
Right.
And
And they
and
operate that
once
way.
you, yeah, and once you kind of break through, that point and say, well, yeah, there's a lot of these different names, but they all are coming from these 30 families, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and they all kind of divide up. and go at it from different directions, but it all at the end of the day is organized like the commission was with the old crime families here,
Mm-hmm.
and they all decide and they steer the boat, right?
Right.
They row in a coordinated direction, and they're
Mm-hmm.
playing the long game. We're thinking about
Mm-hmm.
3 months down the road, they're thinking about 30 years and 100 years and 300 years. And in their world, they are destined to be the dominant force in the world,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and not us. And so, it's time that we really recognize we're in a competitive environment, and they don't want to be our friends
Well, I mean,
at all.
they're criminal, fascists, amoral, completely. There's no rules. Anything will be weaponized. They're have no problem taking out whatever they want to take out to achieve their goal.
Yeah.
Any kind of they traffic. They like to traffic in fear, addiction, the typical criminal activities, and subverting the United States. I think one of their favorite methods that I've seen is just how do you make Americans feel bad about their country, that our system doesn't work. There's a tremendous amount of propaganda I see coming through on a day-to-day basis about that. One thing that's hit this last week is all this AI. So they basically put out a lot of bots that said, hey, Americans, your job's going away anyway. I don't know why you're doing this job. It's going to go away. You're not going to be doing this job. AI is going to take it over. And some people will believe that. And that's a depressant to our workforce and to our way of life and our go-getter American ingenuity attitude.
Well,
That's one thing. That's one thing out of the 1,000 things they do. They'll fly the balloon over.
yeah.
This is the tip of the iceberg. So they're probably operating 1,000 different operations in America simultaneously, where jihadists blow things up and Russians do what they do. They play a chess game. But the Chinese, they just come at you in a lot of ways. And it's not limited. It's only limited by the number of people they have. They will do anything. If it means letting killer bees go in South Carolina, they'll do that, kill off some people, whittle away at our system. To me, if there's a problem in the United States of America, look to the Chinese Communist Party first. And I mean everything, even the culture wars we've been having. I believe that. Without China, their money, buying access, lobbying, everything that they do, subversion on the state level, the anomalies that happen, without that, we can handle the other countries. But China is just a big one.
It all begins with, at the bottom line, with the financial control.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it to me is they have done an excellent job of selling this idea of, well, we can manufacture it cheaper, and the corporations want that. They want it, they obviously for the profit margin. And then we can ship it back to you. So we have this global economy where we're going to manufacture everything. Well, if you're controlling the manufacturing, you're controlling everything at that point, and then add to that, couple that together with the fact that they are our largest debt holder. And if they ever decided to really wreck our economy, they would wreck the world's economy, they would start dumping our debt. And that's why I stay on the subject of, we can't keep driving ourselves deeper and deeper into debt, because at some point they're going to drop the debt bomb on us. It's going to be, and it's not going to be pretty. And that would be a bad day in this country when that happens.
Well,
and it could happen. I mean, it could happen.
Well, they're now trading, as you know, they're going to the gold standard, which very smart. So they're trading now with the Saudis in their currency and Russia in their currency. And the gold standard, for your viewers, most probably know, but it means that you turn your paper money in for gold, for a certain amount of gold. It's backed by gold. It's backed by something. And they could literally just continue to roll that out. Of course, they can steal gold from somewhere. They can buy gold, although gold is going up. And they have to garner more precious metals, which they're doing, and they have ways to do that. As they say, I'm going to trade with each new country in gold, they have to increase their gold stocks. And you're seeing a lot of that happening in the last month and a half or so. Well, what does that do? Well, could they, seriously reduce the value of our dollar? They could, if it's in their interest, or they might just say, we're going to do it unless you do more trade with us. It's more of a control mechanism. Do they really want to crash our dollar? Well, they really want our purchasing. So the golden goose is the trade. If we cut the trade and converted to a manufacturing policy with ourselves and allies, but we'd have to do it fast. But at the same time, how much of what they send us do we need? I mean, do we really need it? Even if we shut down our supply chain tomorrow from some catastrophic event with China, or we decided to do it, do we need a new car? Do we even need a new car for 5 years? Maybe we just call up Jay Leno and say, how do you service all of your classic cars? Well, I use a 3D printer, CNC machines, and we make our own parts. I mean, no, that's just American. I mean, that's how I look at it. We've got a lot of MacGyvers in this country who are sitting on the sidelines, and they're ingenious. They can figure this out, but the need has to be there. The market has to be there. The whole China manufacturing, it's just fake because it's real, but it's fake in the sense that it's all, central government funded. They build the factories. Go out and try to manufacture something. You need space. What's the first thing? You need resources. You need a workforce. But what's the next thing you need? Tools. You have to have your tools. And they provide those tools to the manufacturers. That's expensive. So they come right in and say, oh, here's your plant, here's your cheap labor, here's your this. It's all central government controlled. All the families we talked about, those 30 families, they're all billionaires. And we don't even know how much money they really have. They're very good at keeping this quiet. You have to give them some credit for that. That's incredible how quiet they keep some of these things. So, and of course, their accounting system, you hear it all the time from Wall Street. Well, their real estate market's in the dumps. You really don't know what the numbers are. They don't use the same accounting system. It's really just Wall Street selling you a investment is what it is.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's a sales pitch is what it is. And
right.
And it's going to be constantly going to be promoted as a glowing prediction of what the future holds, right? I mean, that's at some point, though, the reality is going to hopefully take hold with American investors is quit putting money into China.
In a given week or 2 weeks, you see news reports coming out that China's economy is failing, it's going in the dumps, and then the next week, oh, it's back. It's going to 5%.
It's miraculous.
Miraculous. Where's this information coming from? So
it's all fabricated by their government. Everything's controlled by the government. Everything's right. And the government's controlled by the 30 families.
30 families.
It's all an illusion.
It is an illusion. And it reminds me, what's that? It wasn't the show with Jim Carrey where he lived in a bubble and everything was on television. I forgot the name of that. The Ed Show or something.
Yeah, the Truman Show. Yeah.
When I think of the CCP, I think of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap and the Truman Show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they love to piggyback. For example, if you've got a big solar flare event coming up from the sun, they might EMP an American city. And, oh, well, we didn't do that. Of course, our CIA knows they did it, but they can't prove it. They're going to go back. Everybody in their country thinks they did it, and see how much power and control we have over America. We just took out a city. Yeah. And they love to piggyback off of events. It's inexpensive and it has a big effect.
And that's what I think this whole balloon blimp, I call it a blimp, but it's more, they want to call it a balloon. I think balloon's not a good name for it.
Right.
It's the size of three, it's as big as 3 or 4 buses. I mean, it had, it had this thing wasn't just floating around, like a feather. Right. This thing was maneuverable. It was
Mm-hmm.
it was somebody somewhere had a joystick and they were guiding this thing on a path, or maybe it was AI controlling it with a pre-programmed route, because it comes up the Aleutian Islands, it comes down through Canada to into Montana, and then miraculously it somehow ends up in Missouri. It spans most
Mm-hmm.
of Kentucky, and then it swings down to the Carolinas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was on that's a very unique path. But this thing, when you really got to look at it, it had those big solar panels, and
Mm-hmm.
and some of my liberal friends were, well, you were complaining that Biden didn't shoot it down, and then you were complaining that he did shoot it down. No, I'm saying they should have shot it down when it was out west, you
Right.
know, and uh, and they said, well, they wanted to recover and I even heard a reporter on Fox, and I just kind of laughed. Said, well, they uh, wanted to take it out and be able to recover the debris so they could get the film out of
Mm.
it. And I thought, dude, are you living in 1960? There's a big dark room, and and they're going to ship it out to Maryland to get the film developed, or what? I said that thing was broadcasted in real time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just make such silly observations. They make, they just talk, and I don't think they even realize what they're saying. This thing was I think it was a
Mm-hmm.
trial run. I think all these balloons, and and then I had some say, well, Trump, there was two or three that were that 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 come over the continent, over the U.S. mainland
Mm-hmm.
during Trump's administration, and said, and he didn't know anything about it. I said, and my response is, well, if he didn't know anything about it, that means that Mark Milley committed treason, committed
Mm-hmm.
sedition. He's in derelict in
Well,
his duty as a,
I've heard some
you
very
know,
interesting reporting. Have you heard General Keane on that topic? I've listened to
no,
about
no,
four
I've not.
interviews.
What's his
He,
view on it?
I like him a lot. He said that they were flying these balloons, and the purpose is to find areas where we cannot track them, because we do have holes. Our surveillance is set up for nuclear strikes from the north and the west, but they were those balloons that they reportedly came through under the Trump period came in through the south, and the hypersonic missile came in through the south. He said once they found out more about where these balloons had potentially come from, or if there had been balloons, in fact, they went back to all their data and crunched the numbers and looked at all the video and said, yes, we did have incursions during the Trump administration. We didn't see them. We did not see them. We literally did not see them. Then they went
Yeah.
back and looked for the data and found them, and that they've been probing through the southern part of our country. And this one went on a pretty bold, but he said it's all been set up to gather data so that they could find a way into our country without us knowing it. Now he got that from the current Joint Chiefs of Staff, told him that no, we didn't see. It was what's really interesting and obviously about this is under the Trump administration, they didn't know. They went
No.
back, checked the data, and confirmed that actually there were 3 balloons, and now Keene has put together this theory that they've been probing the pathway to come into America undetected.
And that's
So
it.
I
And then
believe him. If he's talking to current military and they said that to him, I tend to believe that at this point. But that was no bad on the Trump administration.
no.
They completely
Yeah,
gamed
they
us. I
just
mean, they found the
yeah,
way in.
yeah, they're it's in their playbook. I mean,
Right.
this is what they do. They find the weak points
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
to exploit. It's just a typical military tactic. But everybody's
I'm
like, well, they could be.
I'm tending to believe General Keene. I like him a lot. I like the way he thinks, and I don't have any reason to think that his analysis isn't correct. But he's definitely pushing against some politics there, right? that says differently. And obviously all the Trump administration officials, we didn't hear anything about it. Well, that's the point. We've gone back and looked at our data in a different way, and we found out that indeed they were here. There were three of them.
Yeah.
So
and
I'm sure we'll hear more about that. That's where
we most likely,
what I've heard
we
this
most likely will, because I think these are just trial runs to, like you said, develop paths of entry that go undetected. Well, why do you want that? Why do you want that? Well, I can tell you, they want to be able to get an EMP into the over land and detonate it. At that altitude, you'd put out about a third of the country.
I think what they're working for is, so they look for these vulnerabilities, whether it be the dollar, the trade, so they're building a package of control mechanisms that's just overwhelming. So yes, they're going to pursue a Death Star laser from satellite, but a lot of evil, criminal people who want to take over the world, they just focus on that. No, they're going to have 100 things that can control us. And I think they'll just come to us one day and say, all right, well, I've got all these things I can do. I'm not going to do them. But I do want you to just step down from your position. We are bringing our people in, and we are just in control of your country. I think that's more how they think. Just build up this massive dossier of hundreds of control mechanisms: water, food, trade, dollar. And is it in their interest to tank our economy? No. America is worth $50 trillion. There are two ways to calculate that. Assets minus liabilities, but there are two accounting methods, and both work out the same. We have $250 trillion in assets. That includes everything. That includes land, minerals, the whole thing, minus 200 trillion in liabilities. Our net worth is about 50 trillion, greater than any country on earth, greater than China, dramatically. They want that. I don't think they want that destroyed. I think they just want that. And
they want to get us to the point where they could just basically walk in. I mean, it's not a matter.
And we're seeing that in Taiwan. They're going to try to do the exact same thing. And they did it in Hong Kong. We saw how they did it in Hong Kong, and they came out they sent Chinese nationals there 25 years earlier. They're citizens. They have their jobs. They're in the positions. They're policemen. When the day came, they were the ones who arrested and took it over. So they're doing that with Taiwan. They're doing that with America. And the reason America is because we're the last bastion of freedom. They're doing things in African countries and all over the world, in all those countries, South Pacific countries. But we're the barrier to them taking over the world with their complete amoral system. And, without us, they have that. So we're a little bit, we're a longer term game where, they have to control many more choke points, but it's actually not difficult to fight that. You just have to do a little bit what India does. India manages them pretty well. They just, okay, I got 290 Chinese apps, ban them. Okay, we're only going to do 50 billion in trade with you. That's not enough for you to control my country. Okay, let's do that. So I'm not, there are countries around China that know how to manage them. And it's very clear that this administration doesn't want to do that. They want to work more closely with them, completely misinformed on who they are, and have been, obviously drinking the CCP Kool-Aid. We have some hope at the local level. A lot of states are putting through good legislation to combat the CCP. And they have more control in China, and the CCP has not functionally controlled those states.
Well,
obviously they do with a lot of agriculture. That's an issue.
Yeah. Well, we've had Chinese companies representatives that have visited parts of Kentucky and
Mm-hmm.
namely here in the coal fields in the southeastern
Mm-hmm.
part of the state, looking to invest, looking to buy mineral, oil,
Right.
gas, coal assets. Um, they've made an effort for cultural exchange through sister cities.
Mm-hmm.
There was a
Mm-hmm.
delegation here a few years ago, went to a coal mining region of China and that's all great and wonderful. But, at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, keep in mind 30 families, organized crime.
Right. Right.
That's it.
That's
Uh,
it.
so let's talk a little bit about action and policy in terms of what decouple China. How do you see, or I guess, what is your strategy going forward with your political action committee, and how do we,
Mhm.
how do you move the needle politically, not only in Washington, but at the state and local level? I mean, how do we approach this with elected officials? Because we have really what I say apologists on both sides of the political spectrum here in the
Mm-hmm.
United States. I mean, not just uh, Democrats, but we also have many Republicans that are um, apologists or appeasers
Appeasers. Right.
yeah, to the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
How do we change the narrative? How do we change I guess we have to change the politician, the elected official, in order to change the policy. So how do we go about that? What's
Well,
your thoughts on that?
the infrastructure is being built currently. You do have members of Congress who they may not sign the Decouple China pledge right now, but they actually believe that, and they're themselves looking for ways to move that forward legislatively in Washington. So there are now, and there's an awareness in the population, and you're seeing whether it be Time, Newsweek, CNN, Politico, Newsmax, Fox, it doesn't matter. And they are all out there talking about China as a threat and a problem, and they're beginning to enumerate those issues. There definitely is a coalition, and it's been brewing for 2 years in the House and the Senate. When you could probably go talk to Chuck Schumer and Todd Young, Mike Braun here from Indiana, and they're going to have very similar views on China. Now, what's stopping that? What's stopping them from moving forward is literally, they have to. It's hard. I don't understand why they can't just say I think they're just so used to doing the trade. Their donors are so used to it, and they just want to continue it. And there's a tipping point that will happen. Now, one of the things I'm doing is a lot of coordination work at the state level and this is the low-hanging fruit. While the federal government is slowly moving forward to prune the relationship with China, the CCP, and I think they should be much more aggressive. The state level is there are opportunities all over the country, and they're taking stronger and more aggressive action. They're closer to the electorate and the people, and that's fantastic. So I'm doing a lot of coordination work at that level, just basic coordination. And then secondly, working with these members of Congress, it's going to take time, unfortunately, because understanding the MO is really the key. You have to watch news reports from around the world. You have to understand a little bit about what India is doing or Japan is doing, what other countries are doing. And our members of Congress are doing that now. I remember a conversation I had with Senator Braun here in Indiana over the summer in July. And it was a very basic conversation about the CCP. And now he's sponsoring legislation. So you have to get in there, have those conversations, point out the facts, continue to show people, it's a comprehensive approach. I'll talk to a state rep, and they'll say, well, I think we need to ban the pension funds to the CCP or China. Yeah, absolutely. You need to do that right away.
Mhm.
But let's talk about how they operate. And then you start talking about what they're doing and what other states are doing and why are they doing that. And then they start to see the whole playing field. That really is the key. Once our legislators know the MO, and that's just basic education, then the light bulb goes off and they say, "Whoa, we are in serious trouble here." I mean serious trouble. And then they'll come to the conclusion we are already in World War III, and they supported Russia with big oil and coal purchases before the invasion. They are working as allies, and that is a front in the war. So, okay, what other fronts are going to open up? So it's really an education campaign at this point, and in coordination. Fortunately, China's doing. They made a big mistake with the balloon. I mean, that really was. I thought that the COVID virus was the Pearl Harbor moment in America, would wake people up, but it just didn't quite do that. But the balloon has serious teeth to it.
It does. It was hard to pin anything down because there was always this plausible deniability. Now we're getting gaslit from every direction, not just by the media, but by the government. And
right,
there's an article that came out late yesterday, I think was yesterday, that the CDC is now admitting that all this mask hysteria didn't do anything to curb the spread of the virus.
right.
You know, but at the end of the day, the thing it is, you have to accept the basic premise is, was this created deliberately or by accident? Either way, it was a created virus that was unleashed on the world. And I think,
Right.
in my world, I think it was deliberate.
I do too.
Whether it's as a weapon or whatever, or it was just to incite a mass panic. I think it was a deliberate act. And if you are to believe this guy that James O'Keefe and Project Veritas nailed here a few weeks ago, that worked for Pfizer, that basically they were talking about gain of function research. He was calling it something else, but that's basically what it is. Are our pharmaceutical companies in cahoots with the Chinese government or elements within the American government? You know, I mean, and look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's no coincidences in my world. There's no such a thing as a coincidence. When you have two or three things that kind of line up, then there's something nefarious going on in my
Right.
view. But it'll all come out in time because it's slowly this information is
Well,
coming.
that's really the issue is in time, even with Fox doing their reporting and Newsmax and Time and Newsweek, all of them, Bloomberg is doing a good job. One thing I'd like to mention that is encouraging is during the Cold War, Voice of America played a role as the publication of record. And they kicked it up 3 months ago. Now they're up to 2, 3, 4, even 5 articles with video a day on anti-China. So far, I've not seen politics in it. And this is the publication of our government. And this is a publication of our State Department where they roll up, they have people in every country, obviously, so they can go get facts and they can report those facts there. So far, it's been non-political reporting. That's very good. And you're starting to see other outlets that they don't have people in every country in the world. They're starting to follow that, and they're starting to do their report. I'll watch Fox, and their article mirrors the Voice of America, and that's good. That's really excellent. And Bloomberg is doing a pretty good job. And they're rolling up a lot of information. I do the Boardman Report, which is aggregated articles from around the world. And I early learned that obviously Newsmax will not quote Newsweek. They won't quote each other. And that's a problem. That's to China's advantage. Just that, putting a lot of information in a report with live links from articles around the world and America gives a member of Congress and their staff a lot of information at their fingertips. And I've had several people say before they do interviews, they look at that and they're able to quickly see some articles that will help them look at the problem not just as a one issue, the balloon issue problem, but as, wait a minute, you know, their silos they're building nukes, the hypersonic, and that's really where our media needs to get. I don't know how long it's going to take them to get there, but they need to be there quickly, and they need to inform the public. Now, we should have a White House that has that conversation with the American people and says, you know, and I shouldn't have to do this. I should be on to manufacturing and making jobs for Americans, right?
Yeah,
but, so
right.
it's not something I want to be doing. I just feel like you have to do it as a step, and that's what I'm doing. And again, my role could turn into that, and that'd be fine with me if our federal government would all of a sudden decouple from China. Well, you know, I'll be manufacturing. So unfortunately, it looks like we have to do the decoupling before we can get into the robust manufacturing that we need to do.
Yeah, it's kind of like the old analogy of pushing over the vending machine. You know, you have to rock it a few times to get it
Right.
there.
Mhm.
So yeah, so the idea is, you know, obviously with a PAC, it's a political action committee. I mean,
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
first task is to find or elect like-minded uh, officials uh,
Mhm.
that will then in turn sit down and look at a comprehensive strategy that helps implement, you know, because in my world, you have food, energy, and medicine.
Mhm.
And those
Mhm.
are the vital things that we should be making
Mhm.
as much of in this country, obviously, as we can.
Right.
And those seem to be the areas where the Chinese, you know, I mean, the steel manufacturing, yeah, I mean, all that. But at the end of the day, they are now coming into this country. They're buying food processors, they're buying land,
Right.
farmland. They offshored a lot of our pharmaceuticals
Right.
comes from China. Uh,
Right.
and so they've got us. They can create food shortages. They could
Right.
delay shipping basic, you know, antibiotics and other medicines that we need, and they could control our energy. And when I say control energy, I mean we're talking about, you know,
Mhm.
component parts, the technology that helps power plants produce electricity, not
Right.
just the resources. And
Mhm.
you look at those three things; those are all in my world, all vital parts of
Right.
secure America. I mean,
Right.
everything can't be national security, but in this day and
Right.
age, that everything is, you know, a threat, can be a
Mhm.
threat to our national livelihood and national our
Well,
interest.
China makes it. They make everything a
Yeah,
threat. That's the whole point. Is they'll weaponize anything.
they weaponize
Mhm.
it all. I mean, they're,
At
you
all.
know, and so if that's going to be the game, we got to get in the
Uh,
game, and we're not in the game. I mean, I think
just
we're
starting to
figuring
get
the
in the
game
game.
out, but we've got to get in the game.
In 2022, I sold and I work on the GOP side, obviously. I sold the Decouple China pledge, which is a comprehensive pledge. It says no trade, you know, just completely change that relationship. I wanted to frame the conversation because you will go up to Capitol Hill and everybody's on one side. Nobody is saying we need to just completely change the game. They're all saying, well, we just have to do a little bit of this, a little bit of
Yeah,
this, and we'll be okay. But we have to get on that. And I'm saying, no, no, no. They're just going to find a workaround and come at you another way. You just have to stop talking to the criminal. That's how you stay away from criminals. Just stop working with them, right? And so I sold that pledge out to all the GOP nominees around the country in 2022. I didn't have any signers from uh, Washington members of Congress, federal level, but I did have some on the state and local level. And I think that's what started me focusing on the state and local level more as a place where a lot of change could happen. And I started working with state legislators around the country and having conversations with them. And then, particularly in Oklahoma, there's some very, very strong anti-CCP legislation that has been entered into. It's in the works. We'll see how far it goes.
Yeah.
But and so I can count that as a success. Is we attempted to put a boilerplate together, an entire civil defense plan together on the state level. I need to raise more money, and then we'll be able to support more candidates and be able to have more of those conversations and get the pledge out to more people earlier. So in this election cycle, with what's happened with the balloon, I could have quite a few people signing that pledge as a campaign tool. But it's going to take some pretty good resources to hit all the state reps running for Congress or in the country, and all the state, probably a couple $1 million to cover that.
Well, you know, right now in this election cycle, and I think even you just have to be you have to be strategic in how you're thinking. But in this election cycle, we've got elections, statewide elections here in Kentucky. We elected our representatives and senators. You know, half our Senate, all of our state representatives last year, along with Congress and Senator Rand Paul. But this year, for our state constitutional offices, governor, attorney general, treasurer, auditor, all those. And if memory serves me right, we've got two other states, I think, Louisiana and one other, maybe Mississippi or Arkansas, one of them, not Arkansas, but maybe. So maybe the focus is those three states, you know, which would include Kentucky. And we're obviously an agriculture state. We're a energy producing state. We have a lot of coal and gas and some oil, and we have a lot of agriculture exports. We do have some manufacturing here. We have a Toyota plant. We have Ford has plants here. General Motors has a Corvette plant here. I mean, we do have some of that, and all those allied industries. But I think Kentucky and Louisiana, obviously Louisiana is another state, agriculture, energy, a lot of export, import, you know, so, but maybe that's where our focus should be, is at the state level.
Right. And I'm fine
with those three elections, you know.
Right.
Let's see how we make, let's see how we make this part of the conversation, part of the debate in these state elections this year.
Well, you will find that anti-CCP sentiment now is strong, and you should be able to stand up and say, "Hi, I've signed this pledge, and we need to have this conversation. This is real." And it should be a vote getter. It started to be a vote getter in 2022, but again, people just were not as aware of it, the problem, and now I believe they are, especially with the balloon. Agriculture is another issue. China can feed their people. They choose not to feed their people. So they've weaponized food. So many states are dependent now. They've invested and very dependent on selling our agriculture products to China. But again, China could feed their people. They so choose not to. If they can build the bridges and the dams and everything they do, they can certainly feed their people. I mean, they can aquaponic if they wanted to in the southern Xinjiang province. It's the size, 3 times the size of Texas. They can do that. Plenty of water, a lot of resources. They choose not to do that. They choose to send 20,000 fishing boats around the world to deplete everybody else's food. I mean, nice neighbor, right?
Well, that's what they're doing. You know, that's what they're doing in the country here. I mean, they bought Smithfield, and everybody said, well, Smithfield, which is over not far from here, over in Virginia, but that's just one brand of a larger number of brands of food products that are processed, not just Smithfield, but
Mhm.
there's other
Mhm.
companies involved in that, and all of which are
Mhm.
common names. I mean, I've looked at that. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a dozen or something. Um,
Well, a worthwhile approach, and there could be now some 501c3 nonprofits have materialized with some funding. Hopefully they have more funding. It's beyond my capabilities as a PAC to put together this report, but that comprehensive report of all those industries rolled into one. What is China doing and maybe 100 different areas, or 200 or 500, however many it is, and get that into one document. And you see
well,
that a lot of that in video, but it has limited impact as a video medium. And even the other tools can help with that education. Infographics can help with that, but it needs to be even more comprehensive. But I'm hopeful that these nonprofits that are coming together can do that, and they're getting more funding,
yeah,
definitely.
and maybe it's a piecemeal where you have an alliance of different PACs or different
Mm-hmm.
organizations that are focused on.
Mm-hmm.
My great interest is obviously in energy. In my private profession is energy
Right.
policy and energy to project development. That's those sorts of things. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's how we segment this. There's a agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
energy, medicine, finance, just all these
Mm-hmm.
different facets. Because, like you said, they're coming at you from a dozen directions, or more,
Well, not
uh,
no hundreds. I would
hundreds.
say I'd put it in the thousands, but it's not limited. They could go to 10,000. They could. My understanding is they have 10,000 people at a computer screen assigned to America, and then 5,000 assigned to the UK, or whatever that number is, right? They sit there and they look at, on a state level, local level, industry level, not necessarily multidimensional, just where there's some opportunities where we could destabilize the society and whittle away the value and gain control. So there's no limit on what they're looking at, though.
Yeah.
It could be the water supply in the Great Lakes, and they find a choke point. And yeah, maybe there's one dam that is that
Maybe,
if you just get it shut
maybe
down, it
there's
creates havoc. I don't
yeah,
know, but that's what they're
maybe there's
looking
a,
at, that on all different fronts.
yeah, maybe it's a
It's war.
substation in the
It's war.
maybe there's substations in the Carolinas that get attacked,
Mm-hmm.
which happened.
Mm-hmm.
There's been, so
Mm-hmm.
when you start really looking at it, those incidents of attack against power distribution are quite numerous. There was
Right.
some attacks here right after that Carolina attack down in North Carolina. It put out that power for several days.
Okay. Well,
It was
has
out in
anybody
Washington State. I mean,
have
so
they looked at those through a Chinese CCP attack lens? How did they
uh,
get rolled up? Who did they get rolled up to? There has to be somebody in the state,
well,
state commission.
the media's knee jerk reaction to that
Mm-hmm.
is, well, that's got to be some kind of white supremacist group,
Right, right.
because it happened in the
Well,
Carolinas. So it's got to be some bunch of some rednecks down there that attack the substation.
no, they're
Why is that
unexplainable
not?
anomalies. That unexplainable anomalies never happened before, has a completely different footprint,
Yeah.
creates a sense of uncertainty and unbalance and insecurity amongst our population. And it really was the CCP. Where do we roll that to? Well, right now you could send some information to the China Committee in Congress, but every state needs to have their own commission and a point
Yes.
person, a China person who looks at it, and CCP looks at it and says, okay. And then you have to educate your police force, and you have your civil defense. That falls under civil defense, and what we're working on in Oklahoma, to have an entire top to bottom civil defense plan. And I think that every state should have that. They should have already had it, and they should be in special session right now putting that together. That means they're going to have more National Guard. should the governor of a certain state have the power to Defense Production Act? I don't know. You have to do a lot of lawyering on that right now, the legal work to determine whether they can do that or not. I would certainly, as a governor, be in favor of that. If my people can't get their pharmaceuticals and I'm being held hostage by another country, I think I, as a governor, should be able to say, okay, guys, go make those pharmaceuticals
Yeah.
for my people. I mean, that
Yeah.
just seems basic to me.
You
But
know, but
the governors
you
that are
know,
in there now, they're not trained for that. They're trained to go do economic development with China.
yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing, is how can we develop closer economic ties? How can we,
Hmm.
that's not the question. That is
Hmm.
not the question.
Hmm.
The question is, how can we strengthen our position as a country,
Right.
as a state,
Hmm.
in trade with China? That's
Hmm.
the thing. It's not
Hmm.
how can we offshore jobs to manufacture to bring things back here.
Hmm.
How can we facilitate land acquisition for the Chinese? That is the wrong thing. It's a subservient role, really, in how, if you really look at
Right.
it. It's how do we strengthen our negotiating uh, position
Hmm. Hmm.
to ensure that we get a fair and equitable trade arrangement. You know, not how do we ship jobs out of the country, ship our manufacturing overseas, and do all that. But
Hmm.
that's the
Hmm.
mindset in
Right.
this. You know,
Well, you get a lot of governors who haven't never seen a booze cruise they didn't like, and they go over to China. They've gone over to China in the last 5 years, 10 years. Boy, they roll out the red carpet for them. I mean, that's why they became governor, because they wanted to do that.
yeah,
You talk to some of these governors and you talk to them about the CCP threat, and they just look at you and freeze. It's not their skill set. A lot of them didn't do well even during the pandemic because it wasn't their skill set. So they'll be moving on, but we need to get those people replaced quickly. I really don't know if 2024 is fast enough, as the CCP truly has metastasized, and
yeah.
they are active in all of these different areas.
Well, I
So,
would encourage you, at least in these, and I go back to Kentucky and
hmm.
the other
Hmm.
states, since it is a
Hmm.
small number. I would really be very aggressive in uh, pushing these candidates for
Hmm.
governor, candidates for state auditor, treasurer.
Right.
The Secretary of State in Kentucky, is responsible for our conduct of our elections and making sure that
Hmm. Hmm.
there
Hmm.
isn't manipulation or tampering with our election process
Hmm.
and all that. So I think it's a reasonable request to say, where do you stand on China?
Right.
That's a legitimate question for
Hmm.
every official, every office, and every candidate running for that office.
And right now, what you're going to probably see is even the presidential contenders are fairly, they're not comprehensive. They're still in the post World War II 75-year mindset of, oh, there's a problem over here. Well, let's get taken care of. It's a one-off.
Mm.
So they even look at the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Oh, the military will handle that. The civilians, we just keep doing what we're doing. And that is absolutely not the world we're in at
Yeah.
all. We're in the world that we'll need everybody involved in this. Everybody has to think about it, just like our parents and grandparents did when they went through World War II. At all levels of our society, everybody has got to understand and truly understand who our enemy is in the Chinese Communist Party, which means you're briefing a candidate, you have to have that briefing book that shows all the areas. And to Gallagher's credit, who's running the China Committee in Congress, he started to do that. And when you hear him in a conversation and interview, he will rattle off, quite a lot of areas that need to be addressed. So I was wondering what would come from that. And now I want him to run the votes and ban TikTok and fentanyl and get rid of, the spying technology through the cameras and surveillance cameras and everything, and get that done 2 weeks ago and just run the votes because they're bipartisan votes. He could put them through, boom, done. So obviously I have a level of disappointment with what he's accomplished. And then he spent the first all of December kind of introducing the committee when he could have had some basic information going out. It was $20 billion worth of promotion that went out just saying we're going to have a committee, as opposed to here's what we conceptually are looking at. But that's just not fast enough. But we do have a committee there, and he is putting out information. So thank goodness we have that. And I would like to see them have those votes, and they're bipartisan issues that could be addressed immediately. And that'll send a strong signal to the American public. Now, you can certainly ban TikTok with a bipartisan vote. You can certainly do something about land. You could ban, CCP purchases of land nationwide, bipartisan vote. Cheers from all around the country. A lot of times they try to strategically look at, well, when's the best time to do that, right? I think we're very much, if you can gain yardage, you gain the yardage. We're in the Super Bowl. I think they'll gain yardage next quarter, no, gain the yardage, get on momentum, get on offensive, go. And that's where my frustration is right now. And hopefully they'll pull it together.
That's it. Well, Paul, we're about out of time. Let's circle back, make sure everybody knows where, and we're going to share all this information in social media, but the website, decouplecchina.org, right? DECOUPLE, China.org. You're on social media. You're on Facebook. Yes. You're on Twitter. Yes. You're on Instagram. I'm seeing here on my notes. All of those, you're available. I know you're on LinkedIn. We communicate quite a bit through LinkedIn. You share a lot of things on there. So we want to make a point of that. I'm interested in your favorite book, Anatomy of the Entrepreneur. Why is that your favorite book?
Well, when you ask me what my favorite book was, that's what came to mind immediately. And the Joseph Jacobs, he founded Jacobs Engineering. He's passed on. We worked closely together when I ran for Congress, and he was quite the amazing person. I really enjoyed working with him. And when you think about entrepreneurship, well, I've rebooted my business. I don't know how many times. I'm not the entrepreneur in the classic sense where, you see a lot of the internet entrepreneurs and things like that. But obviously, I'm a little more entrepreneurial when it comes to what I'm doing with the PAC, right? So that was, 4 years ago when China was popular, and I saw that need. And it was, near and dear to my heart. And I put all my entrepreneurial spirit into that. So it's interesting how entrepreneurship can be on the business side. It can be on the political side. It can be throughout our entire life, So that was what I took away from that book. He was really an inspiration. I would like to be more of an entrepreneur. Maybe there's a chapter that's not written yet where I could, manufacture some great goods for here in America and employ Americans.
Maybe that's an addendum to that text is how do you reconstruct manufacturing in America post China? That's a whole entrepreneurial endeavor right there in and of itself.
Right.
Well, Paul, we're out of time, but we'll have you on again, and we appreciate your time, and best of luck to you. And anything we can do to help, I can personally do to help. we would definitely be glad to do that. Our guest today has been Paul Boardman. He is with the Boardman Report and with the organization decoupleChina.org. Go to the internet, check them out, donate and help them out. And let's set America back on the right track economically and otherwise by decoupling with China. Paul, thank you very much.
Roger, thank you very much. It's an honor. I just applaud you for your efforts, and thank you, and God bless you, and America, and your listeners, and Kentucky.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Kentucky Crossroads with Roger Ford. Be sure to join us for our next weekly episode, where we'll discuss the issues, history, and culture that makes Kentucky such a unique place in our country. Kentucky Crossroads is broadcast on Southern Classic Radio each week and is available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. Thanks for listening.